Welcome to my channel. I'm angry right now, and I want you to know why I'm angry. But before I do that, I want to thank each of you that comes to my channel, that watches my videos, that comments on them, that likes them, that shares them. And I especially want to thank every single person that has subscribed to my channel. You have no idea how much I appreciate it, and I'm amazed by the traffic that I'm getting. I know I'm a small-time site, nothing like some of the big boys. But for me personally, I'm absolutely amazed by the number of people that have subscribed to my channel. I can't tell you how much it amazes me. Why am I angry? Because our government has lied to us. The Democrats have lied to us. The media has lied to us. And it's taken 3 years for us to get to the point where we can find the evidence that proves they lied. And now we may not be able to do a thing about it.
It has been exactly 3 years since January 6th, the events of January 6th, the racist insurrection that shocked this nation to its core, more profoundly than anything since Pearl Harbor, It has been exactly 3 years since January 6th, the events of January 6th, the racist insurrection that shocked this nation to its core, more profoundly than anything since Pearl Harbor, plus the Civil War. And it has taken a while, honestly, even for people who aren't on the side of the professional liars, to realize there's something amiss about what happened that day. Not just the response, the largest law enforcement mobilization in the history of the United States. That was obviously disproportionate because it wasn't the worst riot that year, not even close. But the day itself, there was something about January 6th that didn't feel right. And hovering over that day has remained the question, to what extent was it a setup? And we still don't really know. But what's interesting is how few people have asked that entirely legitimate question. One of the very few, really one of the only in the United States Congress, is a member called Clay Higgins from Louisiana. And in case you haven't seen this clip, it's worth rewatching. This is from 2022 in a Homeland Security Committee hearing where he asked it just directly of the FBI director. Watch.
Did the FBI have confidential human sources embedded within the January 6th protesters on January 6th of 2021?
Well, Congressman, as I'm sure you can appreciate, I have to be very careful about what I can say about when.
Even now, because that's what you told us 2 years ago.
May I finish? About when we do and do not, and where we have and have not used confidential human sources. But to the extent that there's a suggestion, for example, that the FBI's confidential human sources or FBI employees in some way instigated or orchestrated January 6th, that's categorically false.
Did you have?
You're going to find out pretty quickly here as we watch this that Christopher Wray is lying. He is lying to Congress. He's lying to the American people. He's lying about what happened on January 6th.
Confidential human sources dressed as Trump supporters inside the Capitol on January the 6th prior to the doors being open?
Again, I had to be very careful.
It should be a no. Can you not tell the American people no? We did not have confidential human sources dressed as Trump supporters positioned inside the Capitol.
Gentleman's time has expired.
You should not read anything into my decision not to share information.
Director Wray,
confidential human
gentleman's time has expired.
What a sleazy, repulsive little authoritarian liar Chris Wray is. That's obvious when you watch that tape. The sad part is so few tapes like that exist because so few have confronted him directly and asked questions to which the entire country has a right to know the answer, like that one. Clay Higgins did that. Congressman from Louisiana, Lafayette, joins us in studio. Congressman, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me, Tuck.
So that was over a year ago that you asked that question, which is a central question, and you asked it, as I think is appropriate, without any embarrassment at all on behalf of your constituents and the rest of the country. Are you any closer to the answer now?
Well, we're closer to being in a position where we can reveal the answers that we already have. Much of the evidence that we have compiled from investigative effort And over the course of the last couple of years, some offices like my own would have operated in silos of investigative endeavor, have now been able to come together now that we have a Republican majority and we have access to the staffs of the appropriate investigative committees. And so I sit on the oversight committee, and we Republicans run that committee now, and therefore we control the staff. So
Now, remember, the Democrats investigated January 6th for 2 years. Remember that? They had the full access to the staff to do the investigation. And what did they come up with? That it was an insurrection. And now they're trying Trump for having formed supposedly a conspiracy to start that insurrection. And it was them, the government, that conspired. It was the FBI that conspired to create the so-called insurrection of January 6th. If this doesn't make you angry as an American, then you need to check yourself, because there's something wrong with your head. I don't care what your politics are. If it doesn't make you angry that the federal government and the law enforcement arm of the federal government is inciting people to riot just so they can arrest them, there's something wrong with you.
you can magnify the efforts that individual members of Congress have pushed within our own offices. When you can magnify those efforts by the skill and the numbers of staff from the committees, you get a lot of evidence reviewed professionally and aligned and assembled into essentially a case file. And in this case, this is a big file, because the involvement of certain actors, you could say deep state actors within the federal government, to set the stage for what happened in J4, 5, and 6, and to entrap thousands of Americans from across the country and lure them into this set stage on J4, 5, and 6. The people that were involved in that is quite a large web. So yes, sir, we do have a great deal of evidence compiled, and we're gradually, professionally rolling that evidence out.
So you sort of answered the question right there in larger terms. You just said that elements within the federal government, I assume law enforcement, intel, and military, and I'm using your words, lured Americans to Washington into what you called a trap.
Yes, sir.
So that would, I mean, that's a shocking, and I assume that's a sober conclusion based on the evidence. That's what you're saying.
That would be my sober assessment as an investigator, and I love my country, and I've always been a staunch defender of the thin blue line, and I would proudly count the FBI amongst that number. They're like brothers to me. So to find that level of conspiratorial corruption at the highest levels of the FBI has been very troubling to me as a man, as a cop. And yet, you follow the evidence wherever it leads. And
Yes.
This is what investigators do. So when I asked Christopher Wray that question, for instance, I already knew the answer. I had reviewed compelling evidence that the FBI had assets, human assets, dressed as Trump supporters, inside the Capitol prior to the doors being open and the masses allowed in.
Did you hear that? Do you understand what that means? They had agents dressed as Trump supporters inside the Capitol building before the doors opened. Now, why would they do that? Think about that for just a minute. Why would they do that? Unless it was to entrap the people that they lured in. I'm not going to play any more of this because it will just get me explosive. I'm a Christian. I try not to cuss. But this is a damn disgusting, revolting, horrifying news. I assume that all of this will come out this year in 2024. And I assume that it will come out before Trump goes to trial, if he ever does. But our nation has become so corrupt, and he'll point out later in this video when he talks. You just have to watch the whole thing yourself. I'll put the link in the description. You can watch it for yourself. Do with it whatever you want, but I'm telling you right now that the corruption in our government is so complete and so thorough that even when they release this information and they refer people for prosecution, nothing will happen. We saw it in the Russia investigation when a DOJ lawyer was proven to have perjured himself in court, and all he got was he got fired. That's it. He didn't lose his bar license. He didn't lose his ability to practice as a lawyer. He just got fired. Perjured himself in a court of law, in a federal court. The only thing that's going to save our nation is God. Somehow, some way, God is going to have to perform a miracle. That's the only thing that's going to save us. Because it's sure not going to come from men. You know, I watched a show on TV the other night about, it was a hour-long episode about the Battle of Boonesboro, which was a battle fought in I don't remember exactly, 78, something like that. It was during the Revolutionary War. And Daniel Boone was involved. He had founded the town, and they had built a fort. And the British had stirred up the Indians. I don't remember which tribe it was. I think Shawnee, but I'm not sure. But anyway, he had stirred up, the British had stirred up the Indians to attack the Americans. Their hope was that the fort would fall and that the British could then work from the west and move east and defeat the American Revolution. And they may well have succeeded. The Indians attacked the fort for 12 days, continuously every day, and they were unable to take over the fort. On the 12th day, they started sending fire arrows. You know, they would light the arrows on fire, and they sent a barrage of fire arrows into the fort and set the entire fort on fire. And the colonists who lived there, they knew it was over. They were not going to be able to withstand it, because once the walls burned down, they were exposed. But all of a sudden, out of nowhere, a rainstorm came, a very heavy rainstorm, and put out the fire. And then an Indian scout reported to the chief that the militia from Virginia was on their way and that they would be there shortly. And so the Indians withdrew. There's only one way that rainstorm showed up and put out that fire. That was God. That's how God works. When you're in your direst need, when there's almost no hope left, when there's nothing else you can physically do to defend yourself, God will step in, and He will do something miraculous that will save your life. And that's what God's going to have to do for America if He wants to save America. I don't know if God does or not, because our nation is so foul and so putrid and so sinful that if I were God, I would just say, I'm moving on to some other place. But I'm not God. God is a lot more forgiving than I am. And who knows? Maybe, just maybe, we will have a miracle and God will save our country. But it's sure not going to be the men in power. It's not going to be Congressman Higgins, because all he can do is report the findings and refer people for prosecution. But he's referring them to the corrupt Department of Justice. So what do you think is going to happen? You think they're going to put themselves on trial? Not going to happen. Not going to happen. We need a miracle, folks. We need God to intervene and to do something to turn this nation around. I highly recommend you listen to all 38 minutes of this interview. And if you're not as angry as I am when you're done listening, as I said before, there's something wrong with you. You're not a patriot if you're not angered by this. I don't care which side of the aisle you're on. I don't care what your politics are. I don't care if you're the most flaming liberal in the world. You have to believe in justice. You have to be disgusted by corruption, or you're not a patriot. We're fast approaching the time, folks, when you're going to have to make up your mind and you're going to have to take a stand. You're going to have to stand for what's right, or you're going to have to get out of the way. And I pray to God that our miracle comes, because if it doesn't, America is over. And my heart is breaking for my country. For all of you that watch my videos, that little band of people that's subscribed, I pray that God will keep you abundant no matter what happens to our country, that He'll give you a long life and good health, and He'll keep you safe from harm no matter what happens to our country. And I pray that He will do the same for every person that you love. And I pray that you'll be anxious for nothing, but in all things, through prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, you will let your requests be made known to God. And the peace that passes all understanding will keep your hearts and minds in Christ Jesus. This is the Vietnam era vet, more disgusted than he's ever been. Out.